Hey everyone, it's Sam, and welcome back to the 911 Nonsense podcast. To stay in the loop, learn about upcoming guests, and join in the conversations with the Noon community, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hey, if you like what you hear in this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to us. Charlie Swearingen is a critical care paramedic, flight clinician, and educator who believes that getting comfortable is one of the most dangerous things in medicine. Charlie talks about pushing beyond complacency, learning from mistakes, balancing air and ground medicine, and why continuing education and self-accountability matter more than just titles or patches. This is a conversation about culture, responsibility, and doing the hard work when no one is forcing you to. Let's get started. Hey guys, are you looking for a top-notch first aid kit? Look no further than JumpMedic. Owned by a seasoned paramedic with over a decade of EMS experience, their kits are user-friendly and packed with essential supplies. From the most popular Pro Gen 2 to the compact hardshell kit, they've got you covered. You can even customize your own kit with the Build-A-Bag option. Enter the code NOON10, N-O-O-N, the number 10, and enjoy 10% off your order. Free U.S. shipping, and everything is HSA FSA approved. Visit jumpmedic.com and follow at JumpMedicUSA on Instagram. Stay prepared with JumpMedic. All right, Charlie, thank you so much for joining the Noon podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. It's beautiful outside. It's a little windy, a little cold.
A little windy, a little cold. That can be rough sometimes, depending on where you're at for the day, whether you're on air or ground or in the hospital. Can I go ahead and get an introduction of who you are and what you do, my friend?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Charlie Swearingen. I am a flight paramedic since 2005. I knew early on that I was excited. I got my flight paramedic right after I got my medic in preparation to try to get a good flight job, the one local at our level one. I got hired within 2 years, but then I remember walking around thinking that my stuff didn't stink and that I had everything figured out. I had that flight patch and the Katrina hit. And I realized quickly that what I thought I needed to know was only scratching the surface. And in fact, I didn't know a lot of what I really did need to know. So that sent me off in a direction of education. From there, started a company. I've been running that company as a very small side item and doing a bunch of, on the side. And I do a bunch of contract work and build a bunch of stuff for other companies and, that kind of thing. And I love doing it. I'm now back in Mississippi. My wife and I moved from Oklahoma, where I met her, to Denver and worked for Air Methods for 4 or 5 years out there. We moved a couple years ago back here, and I was on my own while in Denver. And I came back to Mississippi 4 years ago. My wife, we had our first of 2 daughters now, and got my job back at University of Mississippi Medical Center. At the level 1 there with air care, and I'm now part-time air care and part-time ground and full-time educator. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, you're crazy busy. Like literally have your hands in everything. I flew full-time for 7 years and I quit flying because of the safety culture at the department that I was at last. And that was a big deal for me. So 2 weeks after I quit, 2 of my very good colleagues and the company that I had worked for previously had a fatal crash, and that was rough. And I'm like talking about, going back PRN now, and I'm having a hard time finding a company that takes people PRN because they want you to have all of the critical care stuff. I have all my critical care stuff, but they want people full-time. And I understand, I get it. I 100% get it. They want people that are fully dedicated to critical care full-time. So I'm having a hard time getting in. But at the same time, like, I don't know that I'll be able to get back into that airplane. You know what I mean? I don't know how I'm going to do because I haven't. And it scares the absolute shit out of me. And I'm one of those people who's very comfortable being uncomfortable. very comfortable being uncomfortable, but that scares me.
I didn't know that there was a term for it. Of course, this past year, we had a crash, and I lost one of my close buddies. He was my business partner in my business. Two other buddies, not just. I mean, these aren't just people in our program. Like this was my base. That was my helicopter I was on a couple days before. Like we relieved one another, and then anyway, comfort flight is the name of it, is what we called it when we started trying to go back. They call it a comfort flight, and so it was a requirement. You had to have a comfort flight before getting back on the line. You had to have one at night and one during the day. I was so surprised, and I think this is completely different. So this is just my experience, because I want to encourage you to do whatever you feel that you need to do, because it's a personal thing. It's so personal. I mean, we always say we get back out there to honor them, but getting back out there doesn't mean you have to get on the aircraft. However you want to honor them, you honor them. But for sure do that. That makes sense. But ours was I got back on the aircraft, and I remember I didn't want to rush. I don't know. I just felt because it was so close. I mean, he was there the weekend before. He came for Thursday, it was a Wednesday or Thursday morning, and he stayed until Friday afternoon. And we worked together. We were building some new stuff. We actually, I think I can say this now, especially if this is going to drop in April. Um, we've signed a contract with Ninth Brain, and our stuff's going to be on Ninth Brain. He helped quarterback that, and so we were working on this stuff. And then we talked about it. I think I took this extra shift on Monday, and we got back on the. He went hugged because he stayed at our house, and we had dinner with my wife and our kids. And anyway, he went home, and I was at my office. I had an office for a couple years, and I remember eating a granola bar, and one of the guys from the Air ATC called that we're buddies with that lived across the street from us, and then he says, "Okay, good." And I was like, what's going on?" And he's like, "You just need to call your boss." And then the flooding of phone calls started. Um, anyway, I get it. And I didn't know how or if this was going to come up, so I'm glad it came up naturally. In the end, it's called a comfort flight. You had to get back and do that, and for me, it was fine. The flight wasn't the problem. I mean, every time I get in there, I usually say like a little prayer, and it's like and I try to always be ready as far as what I'm leaving my family, and try to make sure I leave everything on good terms with them. And when I get up there, I mean, I've got to focus on my crew and my patient, and what I can do to help that out. But I kind of just turn it over. I mean, like, I'm not the strongest Christian in the world, but I do have a faith, and I mean, I put it in his hands, and say, look, um, and I don't know if I'm going to be the guy screaming on the way down, or if I like to think I'm just going to take a big deep breath and think about my kids and wife. But getting back out there was easy for me. It never even bothered me. We had a near miss, and I don't know how much I can talk about this, but we had a near miss early on, right after we got back, maybe within a month. And I don't want to talk too much detail because I haven't really prepped for it. I don't know what I can and can't say, but I'm telling you, 50 feet from another aircraft. I can say that we're 50 feet from another aircraft, uh, with coming towards one another. And there's a lot to it. I think that we were basically trying to radio out and trying to get we could see them, but all of a sudden they came up fast, and it was poor comms, and we were trying to hail them. And anyway, we pulled out. It was one of those things that I never thought about crashing. I never thought about. I just like, what do we got to do to get out of this immediate error? And then after that, you're kind of angry for a second, then immediately back to the patient. So it was that point that I knew, like, yeah, I'm fine. I mean, mentally, psychologically, I'm fine. I can handle this. I'm still saddened and unbelievably just mortified and grieving on a level that I've never really done before, and it's not even my direct family member. But getting back out there is a very personal thing. So, and you don't have to get out there to the aircraft to honor them. So, and I bet you have all these. So, tell me, what do you think what is your plan? Have you been back? Did I miss that part?
I have not been back yet. I was I actually pursued a charge position at the level one trauma center that we have here. So I'm functioning as a paramedic charge, which is the same level as a nurse charge here in the ER. So that's what I'm doing right now. I am pursuing a PRN flight position. I've talked with a couple of people. I have set up a couple of interviews, but that's where we're at right now. I also don't know if I want to work that much because it's been a long time since I've had more than one job on top of doing the podcast. And I really enjoy my home time, you know?
Hmm. Yep. And autonomy.
Yes, my home time and autonomy. Yeah. So you actually have a unique set of circumstances that have gotten you not only into the Olympics, but have also gotten you to practice as a provider with fake legs,
That's the perfect way to say it. That's right.
right?
That's right. Yeah. I was born with bilateral fibular hemilia, big silly words, just meaning I didn't have a fibula and there was no articulation between the tibia and the bones of the foot. So they amputated when I was 9 months old. A tough decision my mom and dad had to make. But dad, I remember the stories of him asking like, what's puts him in the best chance to run. They're like, well, he's probably not going to be able to walk. Is what is the best chance for him to run? And they said, well, you would have to have him amputated. So he said, schedule it and let's do that. And
Wow.
I mean, great. I mean, anything I am is I give, to my dad and my mom but they, raised me to just be tough and they'd come in my room and they put your legs on and go take the garbage out or there was no sympathy because, poor Charlie didn't have any feet. He was like, you got prosthetics, go put them on and let's go to work. Um, and that's carried me through everything. But yeah, the Olympic stuff was I played baseball all the way through high school and then into college and knew I was apexing out and so I was like I need to do something. So when I got a couple years go by, I get on the helicopter. I work one night and I'm off that morning and I go on campus. There's a prosthetist. He was my prosthetist. And he comes in, he says, hey man, I'm sleeping because we worked all night. And they're working on my prosthetics. And he comes in and goes, hey, you want to put these racing legs on? We have this guy that's here doing, selling racing legs. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but sure. To help you run. And I was like, sure. And so this was like early days of YouTube. This is like 2007 or 8, somewhere in that ballpark. Um, they videoed me and they put it on this new thing, YouTube. And that was a Tuesday where they filmed me clocking 11 miles an hour on their treadmill. Now, granted, the treadmill's creating and I'm just keeping up with it. But
Sure.
they videoed me and they extrapolated the time and I'd crossed a mile somewhere around, uh, you know, 5 minutes and 45 seconds, 40, somewhere in that ballpark. They put it on YouTube, and then 2 days later, phone rings, and it's in Colorado Springs. Do you know about in Colorado Springs? Like, I don't. Hands me the phone, answer it. Hello. It's like, hey, is this Charlie? Yep. This is. There were coaches from USA Track. There was like, we want you to start training full time. And I was like, no, man, I can't move to Colorado Springs. He goes, oh no, it's fine. You can run a circle anywhere. And I was like, okay. So I did. I ran for a while, won everything I ever competed in. My mile time got 440 something was the fastest I got. 450, I think it was 452 or 453. But you had to be in the 420s. But I only been training for 6 or 7 months until I was exposed to a tournament where they had a bunch of different Paralympic sports. Sitting volleyball was there. I took to it, loved it immediately. It's a team sport. I played a baseball, loved baseball growing up. So that's what took me around the world over the next 15 years, including the 2016 Rio Games.
That's freaking awesome, dude. That's amazing. I know you said that you didn't get any type of sympathy from your parents, right? Because they were just like, get your legs on, let's go. Was there
Yep.
ever a point where you were like, I don't know if I can do this and be a paramedic, right? Especially one that flies in a helicopter.
No, and that's again credence to my mom and dad. They were like, "No" or "I can't" was never in their vocabulary. It was yes, you can. We just got to figure out how to do it, and figure out some type of strategy to get to do what you need to do. Find the weaknesses that you're going to experience. What can you do to strengthen them? And so for baseball, he's like, first base seems reasonable. You're not going to be as mobile, but you can not let anything get by you. You could learn to be an incredible hitter. You're never going to be fast, you're never going to be mobile, but you could be one hell of a ball player. And I've applied that in anything I've done. And one of those, of course, getting into, I wanted to go to med school and didn't have the grades, during college or right after college. So I went to EMT school, went to paramedic school. In college, I mean, I'm deadlifting, 250, 325 pounds. I mean, like I can pick things up. I can move them. The legs don't break. I've pretty much tested them. So there was never a question of like, nah, I probably can't do this. Now, that said, I will give you the real limitation that I do have. You go to the ground and you go to somebody's house that has a ramp that they built out of plywood. And
Oh,
why people feel the need to paint it with flat house paint, I don't know. It's fine when it's dry, but the moment that it rains, Charlie's got to go down that thing backwards, like because if I try to go down with my foot doesn't plantar flex. So I tell people like, hey, if this is wet, I got to go down, and I'll have somebody like with their hand on my back. It's the only time I ever feel that like, well, if I drop this, I'm gonna get run over, and then my other partner might get drugged down, the patient might get hurt. That's the only real time that I've ever had a problem. And there are times where like I've crawled into vehicles, I've crawled into tight compartments to render care. That's a real thing. Told you earlier the story of me kicking my legs off in front of the family, right? I mean, not it was not the first thing I do, but it kind of just happens over time because I'm constantly, moving to the bag and to the patient, and even though they're close, and like then it gets uncomfortable, so I'll shimmy out of them, and then and then when I get done with the job, I look down, I usually have to apologize, like I'm so sorry, or I looked over the firefighter and I was like, hey man, I don't have any legs. I bet he goes, yeah, I see. Thanks for the heads up. It's like, I'm sorry, man. That is what it is.
that's crazy. How do you feel when you see like how people are reacting to that? What is your response?
I kind of love it because like there's a couple different types of people, and the ones I love are the ones that are just like, what the, and like for instance, when we would land my first chapter at Air Care in Mississippi, this was 2005 to 2010. The pilots that we would fly with, we've flown so much that like we'd land and people would usually, it would come out to, help us, to either bring the patient to us or bring the stretcher or whatever. And they'd all, we'd wait until we called them. But the thing was, I would turn around and I would grab my legs because I take my legs off in the aircraft, and I'd put my legs on, and we would bet. It was like it was three of us, in the as the crew, and it was all right. Which one do you have? It was, you either got the one that said "Oh my God" or mouthed "Oh my God," the one that tapped his buddy like in disbelief, or the holy shit one. And so it's like, all right, what do you guys? I got holy shit. All right, I get the tapper. And then and it's the first one that does something. Like, oh, that's it. He's a tapper, or he's the holy shit guy. And it was $5 bet, back then. It was fantastic. So I mean, I like seeing reactions. My wife sees more because I'm usually, if I notice somebody staring at me, I just let them stare or let them look.
Sure.
Especially the kids. Kids usually have questions, and it never bothers me. Most amputees, it doesn't bother them. There are some that it really does. So, in the end, I usually call them over, or I was like, or I'll just say, hey, how are you? But if the thing is, like, if I'm walking by and somebody is eyeballing me, I'll kind of stare at their eyes until they look up, and then I just pop a wink, and that usually gets the pretty big smile. And it's just funny,
That
and
is
people are just
funny.
curious, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Have you
Yeah.
scared any partners or any pilots or anybody with it yet?
I'm sure now that I'm working with people that I don't know really that well in the local area on the ground. So there's been a lot of like, that's usually my first thing I usually say is like, hey, I'm gonna give you a heads up. I got prosthetics, so don't freak out when I take them off on scene. That's usually my opener. Oh, and I'm Charlie, by the way. That's kind of how that goes. But the seizure patient that I told you about, the firefighter had no idea, and that's the guy I leaned in. And I was like, I think he said his name was Roy or something. And I was like, hey, Roy, just so you know, I'm clearly out of my prosthetics. They're clearly in view by this guy. And I was like, hey, Roy, just let you know I don't have any prosthetic. He goes, yeah, I see that. Thanks for the heads up. I don't think he was happy. I don't think he was, jazzed about the situation. But, he did his job. He did a great job, and he really helped out. And I don't know. Well, hopefully he'll forgive me.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. I think that you sound like you would be a pretty good guy to be around, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to mess with people in anything like that. I think that's a great time.
It's just fun. It's just good fun. Most people, the people in the groups that I work with, I usually wait to see who the first one that's going to pick on me or tease me, because that's a ballsy person, and that's usually one of the types of people that I want to hang out with, because it's kind of like, I know we live in a weird world where people get offended a little too much, but and maybe some things are clearly reasonable to get offended about. But I don't know. I've always diffused with humor. I self-deprecate, deprecate, right? I got to make sure I say that word right. I have no problems picking on myself and that kind of thing, and bringing that in with everybody. But I do love the guy or the girl who's the first one to say, like, bring a leg joke into it. And I'll tell them, I'm like, oh, you were prime number one here. Like, what do you mean? I was like, you're the first one to make fun of me. Well, I didn't mean, no, 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 that's perfect. It's wonderful. You and I are going to get along just fine.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I see that you've done a lot of education, and you talked about having to earn trust back through education. Can you explain like why that might have been an issue?
Yeah. And if I understand your question right, so, you trust with education, if this means something to me, so I'm going to answer it this way. As an educator, I feel the most confident when I'm in front of people, because I always say I'm a redneck from Mississippi, and if I can understand it, then smarter people like you guys can understand it way easier. I just have this feeling that I do a decent job of breaking down complex things and just saying, here's what it is. I mean, like, um, the first time I start talking to people about like IABP, it's like all we're doing is you're blowing a balloon up right when it's relaxing, pushing blood backwards, filling the coronary arteries, and holding it there. It's like liquid PEEP. And then the moment before the heart beats, you deflate that balloon. So now there's a void, and it actually is way easier. I mean, the moment people kind of understand basics, okay, now we get into the harder stuff. As long as you know, like, kind of I not just enjoy doing that, I have to do that so that I understand it, so that at 3 in the morning I could think of that. So I was always have an aptitude and desire to do that. Then I started putting things on paper and realized, like, oh, you can't spell very well. I usually say you can't spell, so GUD, grammar eludes me. Um, and so one of the things that I've over the last 5 or 6 years, more so than before, is I've written a bunch of books and I've done a bunch of content. The only thing that people really complain about is really like the writing and how it's written, the grammar, the spelling. And like I said earlier, partly a good thing. If everybody's now going to start doing AI and writing their own books or having AI do it, at least mine has that organic fingerprint of my poor spelling. But I'm in a phase now where I have a lot of people that support me, a lot of people that follow and do my education. My big thing is making sure that I'm doing everything I can as an educator to continue to get better. Looking at some of my competitors for the things that they do really well, that I don't, to try to fill in my knowledge and ability gaps. Some of that being like making sure that I mean, that's what Jacob was really great at doing in my business, was to I've been a one-man operation for so long. Like, customer service is awful because I just can't get to it. He did a really good job of setting all that up and getting that corrected. We're working right now with every one of our books to get not only as corrected as we can from grammar, spelling, but also get our like citing things like this. These are typically manuals, so I don't cite every page like it's a textbook. I say these are manuals. These aren't like actual, textbooks. But we're trying to move towards that so that we can accommodate folks that are more academically appreciating. So, we check as many boxes as we can, and so when I said educational, you know, eh, getting back and improving through education, that's exactly where my mind went. And I think you probably had a little different of a question, but I did want to, that's been a big thing for me here recently, is over the last 4 or 5 years, is okay, how can we improve what we've messed up in the past as an educator? Because I know that first year going to Katrina, it's how I felt. It's like, man, you made a bunch of mistakes. And then so then I quickly began to fix those things. And I never really try to do that in the business. And so, I don't anticipate or I don't know that my goal is to be the number one business on the block, but I do want to put out fantastic content that people that a lot of people will want to go to use so that we can make people better because eventually I'm going to look up and I'm going to see them and I hope that they are good to go. you know just learning from our mistakes.
Sure. So the biggest thing for you was like the misspellings and basically grammatical errors. And I mean, if that's the worst thing that you've got, that's nothing. You know what I mean? And that is very easily fixed. So that is good. Was Katrina one of your first like really, I mean, that was a huge disaster, right? So that was that like one of the first big disasters that you were part of?
Yes and no. 9/11 technically was the biggest, but I was an EMT in paramedic school. Like that morning, we took a pharmacology test. We got out of class, and I remember hearing something about it. And we got upstairs, and they were like, or we got out of our test, and we got upstairs, and our professor was like, "Y'all need to go to the union." And we walked in and watched that second one smash into the tower. And so that was the first one, and you're in school and you're doing the thing that you want to do. Like I volunteered to drive a fully loaded truck to New York, and I missed it by just one person. If I'd have been one person ahead, I'd have gotten that experience. But Katrina was the one where I feel like not only I was a medic, I was 2 years in, worked a lot of ground, rural and in Jackson, Mississippi, a lot of shootings and stabbings, and then got my FPC and was working for a couple months, learning all this stuff, using it with some fantastic clinicians that are really, really good. And then Katrina hit, and we landed and separated. Like the first flight I went on, my boss went one way, and she just happened to be on that night. My boss went one way, and I went the other. And I intubated one person, she intubated one person. There was two others that really needed intubate, and we met in the middle and had to figure it out. And I'm telling you, I got back and I was like, I know I just messed half of that up, but what can we do? And so Katrina was the one that was actually where I was making decisions and felt like I had more control of my part.
Why do you feel like you were messing things up while you were there?
The imposter syndrome, I didn't know what it was then, but I mean, I think, and I don't know, and I've heard doctors say the same thing. I mean, you train, you train, you know, um, and then you're put in a situation, like somebody call the doctor, or somebody call the medics, like that's you're it. And then then you have to fall back, to the training, you have to fall back on it because your mind's going just nuts. But I always felt like I could have done that better. I could have done that better. Okay, you did this okay, but I could have done that better. And I think part of that is I knew baseball as a bilateral amputee going to a baseball tryout. I mean, I gotta hit the ball 5 times better than everybody else, to get picked. People are gonna look at you immediately go, oh, well, he's got some disabilities, like not necessarily the disability, but like he's got some limitations. And so the things that you do well, you got to really highlight. And so I think part of that's kind of how I always take a problem. I want to dissect it, figure out what my weaknesses are and how I can improve on those or highlight something else to be way better. So I think I've always kind of picked at my own, you know, what I do, but when you talk to other people now, that's what they're really describing the imposter syndrome. I really shouldn't be there. I'm not that good. I'm making a mistake of this, and maybe the mistakes aren't that big. I tell people all the time, maybe the thing you're worried about isn't that really big of a deal, but it sure feels like it when it's you and you're holding yourself accountable. That's just what it feels like. Is hear people start talking about the imposter syndrome. I mean, they're dueling with their accountability. It's a beautiful thing. It's a fantastic thing, and something I hope that more and more people employ.
Sure. I'm going to delve just a little bit deeper into this conversation. Now that you think, right, you're telling me right now that you think that you made mistakes because it was imposter syndrome. And I wasn't there, so I don't know. And so I just want to know, do you think back at it now and think, Oh, yeah, those were little mistakes. I was making a bigger deal of it. Or is it something that you still think about and worry about?
I think the former. I think now I'm probably making too big of a deal of little things because, like anything else, the more experience you gain, the more value, the more you learn that some of the little things are too little to worry about. There's bigger fish to fry. So I do think a lot of times when I was worried before, it's like, all right, just calm down. You're doing fine. You're doing you hit all the right things. Were you stylistically perfect? Are you gonna did you nail the landing? Maybe not, but you got the work done. You did everything you're supposed to do. You didn't hurt them. Now there's also a handful of times that I've made some awful mistakes. There was a kid I killed. So I would tell this in my classes. I killed a kid once, 14, 15-month old that had spinal muscular atrophy type 2. Now, I didn't know that. And the background is we landed, me and my partner been working for 3 or 4 years at that point together, intubated hundreds of kids, which isn't going to impress any anesthesiologist, but for pre-hospital, it was a solid number. I think we looked it up. It was like around 320, under like the age of 4 or something. And this time we used succinylcholine because the kid looked tired, looked like he was about to crash. You pick his arm up and he drops it. He's listless. He's breathing 60 times a minute, real shallow. Been doing it for hours. All he's got is blow by oxygen. So we get ready to intubate, give him sucks. He goes into master muscle spasm, malignant hyperthermia. Over 45 minutes, we worked him until we got him back. But the first 8 minutes, I mean, first off, the first minute, his mouth shut like a Venus flytrap. And then we couldn't open it. Luckily, his nares were clean. And I was at the head. I was bagging. I was making sure I had a good seal. I was making sure that I saw the chest rise and fall. We had like a portable SAT probe that had the right size, and I could see the pleth. So I'm eyeballing all these things. We immediately give rocuronium. I said, Bill, we have master muscle spasm. I need you to give rocuronium. He goes, oh gosh, okay. I was like, can somebody put a tip probe on him or their hand on him and let us know when you start feeling get hot. A couple minutes later, feeling hot, end titles rising. Okay, let's get him cool. I'm guessing you guys don't have, dantrolene and you know what I was talking about. So, okay, fine. Over 14 minutes later or so is when the rocuronium finally loosened up. And about that time, the pleth started going crazy. Nothing's changed but anything else. And I asked for a code card. He's not in arrest. And I was like, he's about to be. A minute later, he goes into arrest for 30 minutes, off and on, VFib, PEA, VFib, PEA, he side waved out. And at some point, the people there who thought we were heroes at first now are the devil. And they were, this one girl, I remember her keeping notes. And I was like, I guess your job is to take all the notes so that when litigation happens, everything's documented. She goes, probably. And I was like, will you ask them to please run blood as fast as they can there, come back, get it, take it back, and keep doing it until the end of this? She goes, sure. And so we have this about 6 different data points of labs. Guess how high? Now we got the kid back, and I tracked this kid on Facebook, and I watch him grow up. He runs around. He's fine. There's no deficits. Like he's actually really good for a spinal muscular atrophy type T2 person. I watch him, and he's so we got him back. He's relatively fine as far as like we don't think that. Not my words. The physicians. Like I don't think that what happened hurt him. But I killed that kid, and because at some point we're asking for the history, and like, oh, it's shift change. It wasn't my patient. Blah blah blah. I was like, hey, we need to know because we got to intubate this kid. And once we give sucks, 7 or 8 minutes later, look around the room. There's more people in there now. And I point, are you the physician? She goes, yes. And I was like, what history does he have? Oh, he's got this and this and spinal muscular atrophy type 2. And I remember thinking, so this is the last patient I'll ever go on. Okay. All right, this will be the last call, because I just gave a spinal muscular atrophy patient, a neuromuscular patient, succinylcholine, and learned firsthand that hyperkalemia and malignant hyperthermia are a thing. And anyway, with long story short, we treated it, and guess what that kid's potassium got to before we finally got spontaneous return to circulation and brought him home. I'll give you 3 guesses. It's not fun. This isn't fun.
Is it like super high?
Uh-huh.
10.
Higher.
Oh, 15.
Not that high. It was 12,
Okay.
6.
Oh my
I
gosh.
put it in one of my textbooks, and yeah, it was awful. There it is.
Oh, poor baby.
That's the sine wave of 12.6. Yep. And so, imposter syndrome. So there's times where we're like, oh, we could have done that better. We didn't do a very good job. So, okay, maybe that's a little thing. Maybe in 15 years or 10 years or 5 years from now, the you looking back, no, man, you did fine there. That's fine. That really wasn't really that big of a deal. But there are some things that was a big deal. So, um, I don't know, like we all make mistakes and I, at that point, we had intubated, I think like around 250 of those 300 patients, pediatrics, we use succinylcholine. I still use succinylcholine to the day. One of my biggest, funnest fights to get in with people, fights or debates is, people say suck sucks. I was like, you know who doesn't say that? Anesthesiologists. There's a time and a place for everything. And I'm not saying that if you think suck sucks, then that's no problem. Don't use it. And I'm not going to ever call you out or say anything ugly, but there are times where arguably could be used safely. Are we risking malignant hyperthermia? Sure. Can it be managed? Yes. Can it be managed without dantrolene? Yes. Are they at risk? Sure. But the point is there's little things and there's big things. And I think for the imposter syndrome, we should, as we get more experience, let those little things go, but definitely need to make sure we pay attention to those middle size and bigger things because you don't want to make the same mistake again. And I never have. I several questions have stemmed from my of assessment questions have stemmed from that. I tell it now, when I explain to people, I was like, I don't care that you memorize all the different neuromuscular problems, but in the end, if your patient's four extremities don't move like normal, and if they have if they're in a wheelchair, if they're bedridden, if they're bed bound by more than one day, if they're bed bound full time, if they use crutches, if their arms in a cast for longer than 24 hours, all of these things predispose you to the same thing that kid was experiencing, and you could develop malignant hyperthermia in as little as like a quarter of one extremity. So I ask a lot of questions now if I ever do give succinylcholine. And there's sometimes like, well, unsure, just going to skip it. We'll go to rock.
Sure.
But anyway,
No, that's how it is with a lot of medications. And like I love ketamine in intubations, right? In our size. I love ketamine. People like ketamine for psych patients. I am not a fan of ketamine for psych patients. I almost never use it for psych patients. But then you have like Levophed, used to be leave them dead, and now it's almost the number one presser for any type of shock, not just
it's almost biblical. Yeah.
sepsis anymore. Yeah, yes, it's almost biblical. They're like norepi first before anything else, right? In every type of shock, not just sepsis, but everybody's going to have their thing. I refused a long time to take prop on flights because as soon as you get them moving, prop's great in the ICU, right? Where they're in a very non-moving bed. You're not doing a lot of things to move them around. There's no jiggling, there's no nothing. But as soon as you get them in the air, they're waking up, they're fighting, and now you're having this battle between your blood pressure and any other type of sedation medication that you're trying to give to this patient on top of prop. But then you learn more about prop and it has so many other great qualities. So I now like to take it with flight on top of other medications as long as I can manage their blood pressure okay. But everybody has their thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's the funny thing because it's so you could put us in camps by the things that just gnaw at us. You know what I mean? And I think it's funny. And we were at dinner at I think EMS Expo, and my close friend and buddy Danny Naiman. If you don't know Danny Naiman, he is the sole paramedic that's the editor for the Principles in Practice. I think it's Principles in Practice. the patient transport text by Elsevier. That's the ASNA textbook. He's a medic. He's not a nurse medic. He's a medic. That's how amazing this guy is. Anyway, we're sitting at the table, and somehow he comes up and he says something about giving sucks, and then I was like, "Oh, I'll give sucks to you know." And so then we would immediately go back and forth. But I love that bit of. I think we should be able to be willing to defend what we think a little bit more often. And so I've offered people before to go on and debate in open forums, like a video, like podcasts or videos or whatever. People just don't. I think inherently people don't like to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And now, truth be told, I debated and I'm a nerd, so I debated in high school, and my wife hates that I know how to debate and how to formulate arguments and remember what you said and make attacks on them, and so she doesn't like it. But I usually try to I avoid as much as possible arguing with my wife because I like her kisses, and I don't want I don't want to minimize those. So my buddies are like, God, we just argue all the time, and I was like, I just value her sweet time way too much. So
And
she can
it's
be right as much as she wants.
honestly, it's not just about the debate, right? But it's also about being open to hearing what other people have to say and why they're saying it, right? If you're just arguing
Yeah.
that blue is blue because it's blue and it's always been blue, I mean, that's not really an argument. That's just you being one-sided and not being receptive to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I really do think, and I mean, you could argue this with medications, you could argue this with policies, politics, anything. Like, I don't care who, well, let's keep it medicine based. I don't care what medication you pick. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to argue it, and I'm still going to value your friendship even though that's not why I would do it. Me personally, I'm going to ask you why you do it. I'm going to start grilling you. Well, why are you doing this? What causes it? What is there any time where you wouldn't choose this? You know what I mean? Going down that route instead of just saying, well, that's ridiculous. He's a bad provider because he chose sucks instead of rock. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's in the end, like if you can and look, there's been a couple people that's like, has some really, really good points. I'm like, hey, I'll concede that. That's a great point. And if it's me and you and we have a patient, I'm not gonna force upon you to do sucks. I think if you gave me those arguments, like you don't want to do it, no problem. We don't do it. Those are great arguments, and valid, points. And just too often there's way more than one way to do something, right? So, right or wrong is, especially in medicine, it's, I mean, unless something is absolutely contraindicated, there's rarely a wrong, well, that's not exactly true, but I mean, like if you have if you're trying to achieve X effect and there's 16 medicines that do that, and a couple have some cool side effects that help, most of them don't have any extra, and then a couple of them actually have some negative side effects. I mean, the point is there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Maybe you give one of the medicines that causes a bad side effect, but then you give a medicine to counteract the side effect. I mean, that's really what critical care is, in the end, when we talk about like, oh, I want to give PEEP. All right, well, some people, sick people, too much PEEP can begin to contribute to a drop in cardiac output, drop in blood pressure. We don't remove the PEEP if it fixed it. You just give them a fluid or blood if they're bleeding or pressor or whatever. And but the whole point there and agreeing with your basic argument is, I think if long as people come with like, hey, in the end, this is what I think, this is why I think it's a good argument, or if it's at least structured, there's times when I agree, disagree, and that's okay. And why we can't just leave it at that. And I know you didn't want to get into politics, and we don't have to crack that open, but at the same time, it applies to absolutely everything. There should be logic and backed with facts. The thing that I hate listening to anything in non-medical ethos is we're the only ones in academia that are forced to prove it. That we go out
Yeah.
other places, and it's like, well, blah blah blah. Well, how do you know that? Well, I don't like. Well, I can't do that in medicine. Like, I have to have a reason. I have to have some evidence. And I think, it's really interesting. And again, I don't mind getting into debates or getting into some controversial topics. I have no problems. In the end, I also know that you're a person, not just you, but like I know people are people, and they have families, and they have loved ones, and they have desires, and they have wins, and they have losses, and in the end, like in the end, who cares? Like once we're done talking about that. All right, how are you? How's your family? You get into non stuff that bothers you, and I think we need to tap more into that. I mean, my dad used to be best friends with somebody now that would be his sworn enemy. And
Yeah.
and they were two unbelievably different people, and they had to limit some of their topics they talked about, but they did a great job at it. If it got into that, like, all right, I'm going to concede you win. I'm not saying that I agree. I'm win, and we just talk about something else. And they were great at it. I wish we did more of that.
I agree. Yeah, they were able to mitigate the situation themselves and maintain that friendship, which is a honestly a beautiful thing. It comes down to eating our young way too much. You know what I mean? Where we're so judgmental of people that are coming into this position, whether it's as a basic or paramedic or critical care, that we are quick to say this person's not going to hack it. And instead of saying this person's not going to hack it, why don't we say, well, how can I help them get to the level that maybe I'm at, or a level that's above me, or even a level that is acceptable for this position? You know what I mean? I think we need to push more and be more receptive to that. And maybe we would have less short staffing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if we promoted people to be in these positions and held them accountable by holding ourselves accountable, we probably would have a lot more staff than we currently do in all fields of healthcare.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and we'll go back to one of the first things we talked about. I think that too often, if you get to a position and you get complacent, pretty quickly you probably are aware of it, and then either you feel bad, or at the very minimum you don't want to go learn the stuff and close the knowledge gap or the skill gap or the XYZ gap. Then that puts you in a position where the only defense you have is to lash out at others to some degree, or to keep people who could be good from exposing you. You have to, now all of a sudden they're an enemy. I think that probably happens. And I hope it's just my weird logic mind trying to bang a square peg in a round hole. But I think that probably does happen. And I think that the simple fix is just let's look inside and say, okay, what do I need to work on? And if I start working on those things, and then how about we say every once in a while, I don't know that. It's okay that you don't know some certain things, or hey, I know that I've gotten weak at this, because in critical care of pre-hospital medicine, we're like the guy at the circus that has those six plates, or he's kind of keeping them juggled. He's got to keep spinning them, right? That's a knowledge of something that perishes over time. It gets slow, and it falls down. You got to constantly keep studying to keep them all going, and it's just too easy once we get to a higher level, like a flight suit. To put your boots on the table, as opposed to put your elbows on a desk and read a little bit more. There's plenty of education out there, whether it's by dedicated educators or just people sharing their experience. All of that is, I mean, honestly, in today's world, if you don't know how to do almost everything, or if you want to go look something up, it's so easy. And it's, the cool thing there is the user gets a consensus if they look up the one topic and they watch 7 or 8 people do it. You begin to average out what it's looking like. And if you marry that with like a good, site or source, I think we should, that's my hope, is that we figure out how to influence the culture to get back to that a little bit. But that's a big boat, hard turn.
It is a big boat and a hard turn. I agree 100%. And Charlie, I just want to give you the opportunity to discuss anything that you feel that we haven't talked about, or if you would like to do any shout outs, now would be the time.
I didn't prepare, but let me just do sure a couple. Just take this time to give thanks. I've been influenced by a lot of incredible people. And so I'll try to make this quick, and I will, of course, forget folks. But one of the first people that influenced me was Kevin King. He's one of our nurse paramedics here at the level one that I work at, Air Care. And he and I worked a ambulance shift. He got on to like this. We worked in 2000, and then he eventually got on Air Care, and later on I got on. So he always was excited for the next tough call. Never wanted people to get hurt or injured or sick, but he wanted to be there and do the stuff that he knew how to do and be there to take care of him. That really influenced me, and I really appreciate him for that. Donna Norris was my first boss at Air Care, and she was awesome during my time. And she says that there was a lack of options when she hired me, but I totally get that. She's always tried to keep me humble, but she knew how to juggle being kind and then holding you accountable all the same breath. Alan Wolf is the clinical education director right now at Lifelink 3 Minnesota. I worked with him at Air Methods for 5 or 6 years, and I probably text him once a month and keep up. He really helped me become, if I'm at all educational professionals, because of the things that I learned from him. And when I was working with a group this past week on basically a dashboard. And he's really big at CQI, and Alan was, and so I was able to show a couple things, and they thought that I just invented wine or beer, and it was humbling. But I mean, I learned that from Alan. There's a lot of buddies that are at the same level. I just I just named three, and there's really, most of those are clinical. I could go into the volleyball line, or I could go into me being raised as an amputee, or my philanthropies that I'm a part of, or whatever. In the end, I think there's a lot of people out there that we have that have influenced us. Just let them know that you appreciate them. My big fear is I'm going to look up one day and see somebody working on me doing something. And maybe I don't see it, but I mean, somebody will eventually be doing something. And I hope that we've paved the way. We've done our due diligence as best we can to not only give the right education, but I mean, I think part of that you and I's frustration probably stems from, and others, is just the culture. I mean, how do we improve the culture? How do we make people want to be better? How do we make people want to open up an OB chapter and just go to town, making sure that they know, if they have a frank breech, delivery, what the next couple steps are. Are we going to be ready for, Marceo's or Mauricio's, maneuver? Are we going to be ready for the Woods corkscrew? Are we be ready for it? That's really that's my fear is, are we doing enough, not only for the education, but for culture? Again, I think that we have a really good ability to change our culture. It's going to take enough people agreeing to it and subtly doing it. I don't think it's anything big, drastic, that where this happens and the war's over and now we have better culture. I think it's just more people talking about how we can get better, how we can push ourselves a little bit, how we not eat our young, like you mentioned. I like that. And part of that can stem, or part of that can be achieved by, telling your mentors how much you mean to them, and then acting as a mentor. What they're your mentors because they believed in you at some point, and you should do that same thing to your words. We shouldn't eat our young. What can we do to help multiply the people coming up after us into being higher and better than us? I think that's a great goal to have.
I agree 100%. That was all very well said. And Charlie, I just want to say thank you again for joining us on the 911 Nonsense podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful day today.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Next time I'll have a beer. I just feel like got some more stuff to do, so didn't want to drink middle of the day. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, we will. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show and want to show your support, be sure to check out the Noon merch store on Bonfire. Find the link in the description below. Also, if you have any guest suggestions, or if you're interested in being a guest on Noon yourself, visit the website at www.samspursuit.com to get in touch.